was not the thought that I was left with. Oh my gosh, puberty hit because they exist now. They're changing everything. I'm trying to figure out where I remember where I was going with this. Hi guys, welcome back to another Rants video. Today we're going to talk about Inside Out 2, a movie that I was not expecting to watch in theaters. Complete honesty here, guys. When the trailer came out, my feelings were very meh about it. I was like, why did they need a second one? I know they had a little bit of the, oh, there could be a sequel with the puberty button alarm or whatever it is at the end of the first one. But the way the movie wrapped up, it's like, they don't need a sequel. I did not expect them to come out with a sequel. Like, I was not the thought that I was left with when I finished that movie, because you know, there are movies where they finish the movie and you just have this feeling, whether it's very clearly stated or just subtly implied, that it's like, there's going to be a sequel for this one. This was not one of those movies. This is one of those that I entirely thought was going to be a standalone movie, but Disney doesn't know how to do that. They've never known how to do that. We give so much praise for all of the older movies like Cinderella and like Hunchback of Notre Dame, Atlantis, Lost Empire, all of those. It's like, which they're amazing. Yes, they deserve credit, but also they had sequels. And most of the time they were not great sequels. So it's like, it's not like Disney could do no wrong in that stage of their movie making. They were just a lot more, they just hit more than they miss at that point in their movie making. So yeah, I definitely did not have high expectations for this, especially with how vague, I guess, the trailers were, which I get with that kind of movie. They don't want to like plaster across every single trailer what theme they're going to be talking about, because that's the thing with the Inside Out movies, is they tackle kind of deeper, tougher topics and tougher themes than a lot of children's movies do, which I can appreciate. But because of that, and not wanting to be like, we are talking about this theme and here's what, basically spoil everything, because you know, it's like, here's what the theme is, and like, this is what they have to handle and all of that. It's harder to reveal some of the plot stuff in trailers for a movie like this. So basically my brain went, so new emotions, and we literally get this scene where they're like, oh, the OG's emotions are like, we are suppressed emotions. So you're like, okay, are they going to get to play a role in the new movie or not? Are they just going to be sidelined and then they let anxiety and whatever else take over? And then the other thought that I had, and I didn't really know really that I had, it wasn't like a conscious thing that I actively knew. It was one of those vague thoughts that became very concrete and very clear after the fact. And I went and I watched the movie and I realized, oh, this was something I was worried about. My brain, watching these trailers and all of that, my brain kind of just thought, oh, they're gonna pull a very, like they're gonna make a bad story choice here and go, oh my gosh, puberty hit. Suddenly, all these emotions come in and start changing everything and all of that for no reason beyond puberty. And that's where my brain went, because they can't necessarily reveal a whole lot in the trailers because, you know, spoilers, and they don't want to ruin the rest of the movie and the experience of the movie by, you know, spoiling it by revealing all of the deeper themes and whatever else that are happening in the movie in the trailers. And so my brain was subconsciously going, okay, so basically they're making a movie. It's like, oh, she hit puberty. Suddenly anxiety and embarrassment and all of that are a thing. And they just, because they exist now, they're changing everything. And so my brain, I didn't like that. I didn't know that's what the problem was. But when I got into the movie and I started watching it, I realized about halfway through, it's like, no, that is the reason that I didn't have great expectations for this movie. Because in my brain, in my subconscious, my mind was going, it's not going to make sense. They're just going to be, oh, puberty. That means anxiety and whatever else can be a thing now. So they're going to start changing everything for no reason. It's just what it is because puberty. So that's where my brain was what my brain was thinking. And when I went into this, the only reason I went is because my boyfriend invited me. And so I was like, okay, fine. I will hang out with you in a theater. And even if it's not a great movie, like, I will watch bad movies with you. I don't care necessarily what we're watching because, you know, I'm hanging out with him. But anyway, so that's the only reason I went in the first place. I was very pleasantly surprised. It was actually very good, and I liked the themes that they hit on. I liked that the way they worked it out with the new emotions and the original emotions is the original emotions didn't really get sidelined, and they still did things throughout the entire story. And the new emotions, the way that they came in and the reason that they started changing things, they had a reason for it and they made it make sense. So it's not just like puberty, anxiety takes over. It had a purpose and a trigger point, I guess, which I really appreciated, and it made the whole thing kind of make sense. And that really alleviated a lot of the problems that had come up in my brain about it. Was having that reason and that trigger. So I did enjoy it. It was not, I'd say it's not quite as good as the first one, just because, you know, there are moments where the new emotions definitely have their moments where they're just like, it's a little annoying. And, you know, modern Disney, sometimes there wasn't too much clunky dialogue in this. I didn't really notice a whole lot of clunky dialogue. They did pretty well writing-wise in this one. But just the way the characters with new emotions are, there are definitely a few random moments where, very few, honestly, but there's always things. So I don't think it quite met the standards. I don't know if standards is the right word, but didn't quite meet the same level as the first one, but it was still very good. Yeah, that's spoiler-free stuff, I guess. I know it's about halfway through that I hadn't spoiled anything, so I decided to just keep going. Now we'll get into spoilers, because I really want to talk about the theme, because it was a very cool theme, and it came up in Bible study and stuff a couple of weeks beforehand. We watched it, so that was kind of interesting. Clearly God wants me to look into this particular topic. So yeah, spoiler warning now, I guess. First of all, we'll talk about the trigger, because that's the part I most appreciated, because that's the part I was most worried about. But having that trigger of, going to hockey camp for a weekend, and then finding out on the way, because they're 13, so they're going to be freshmen the next school year. Finding out that her two best friends in the whole world that have, gotten her through this transition and gotten her into all of that and have been her connection to her new life in San Francisco are going to a different high school. Because they got assigned there or whatever. They're from a different school district for high school or something. Or whatever. So it's they don't have a choice in the matter. They're getting sent to a different high school than her. And that realization for her of my two best friends, my two only friends really, aren't going to be with me in high school. First of all, high school, a lot of things happening. Now, especially if you're going to a public school or something. I don't personally have experience with high school in an actual school. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have as much of that, definitely not as much of that, but there's still a lot of changes and stuff going into it, even if you're homeschooled. Just the becoming a teenager, getting into the next stage of life, the different expectations and whatever else that go with that. And then on top of that, for Riley having public school. So all of these other people around her and having to go to different classes and having like all of the things that go with being in a public school, and then high school stuff on top of that. And so having this kind of earth-shattering realization, it's like, I'm going to have to go through all of these changes, learn a different school, learn a different schedule, learn these new expectations, learn all these things that come with becoming a teenager and growing up and kind of growing into womanhood. And I'm going to have to do this alone. Like, we'll still be friends, we'll still hang out, but from the day to day, in the majority of the hours of the day throughout the school year, I'm going to be going through this alone. And so having that realization and then pulling up and going, and then, anxiety would ever show up and going, we need to figure out, anxiety basically going, I need to take over, because we need to figure out and plan ahead and get friends that are going to be in our high school, so that when we get there, we don't have to be alone, and we don't have to try and figure all of this out by ourselves. We need friends. We can't be alone. And that desperation for having a relationship, which is a valid thing, and it's something that we all need as people. Like, we're created in the image of God, and God is 3. And so that that might be the word I'm looking for, but that essential need for community is built into us. And so I love that they use that kind of trigger, where it's just like, no, community is so important. I don't care if you're introvert, shy, whatever. You can have social anxiety. I don't care. You need people in your life, and to some extent. Some people need people more than others, but we all, when it comes down to it, we all need community, and we all need people. So having this sudden realization of, I'm going through so many changes and so many things are happening, and I'm not going to have anyone to do it with, triggers anxiety to kind of take over and go, we need to change so that we can impress these other girls that are going to be at our school, so that we won't be alone. Which leads to her, leaving her friends behind, whatever else. But yeah, that trigger was very cool, and I love that they did it the way that they did it, and it was a very relatable and very good trigger that I think they chose to use. But this leads us into the overarching theme of the entire movie, which was, they didn't really use the word too much, but it was identity. Like, they called it beliefs, like sense of self, whatever else, but they never really they maybe used the word identity. Actually, I don't think they used the word identity at all, but that's what they were talking about. It's like her identity, the core of her being, because they have this realization that in the prologue, whatever, explaining things, setting up for the movie and whatever else, they have discovered that memories can form beliefs, and those beliefs form her sense of self. And sometimes the emotions don't have to even do anything in a situation, because Riley's sense of self takes over, so they don't have to control her, I guess, or drive or whatever. She can kind of go on a little bit of autopilot because of her sense of self and these beliefs that she has and that she's formed through her experiences and her memories. Which that's just a cool thing anyway. Like, the way they set up the kind of the world of the mind in the first one was really cool. So having this this other level of it, I think they did it really well, and it fit very well. And so then we have kind of exploring that, okay, going into high school, and especially going into it with this belief, I guess, that she's going to be alone. We have anxiety, freak out, and go, no, we need to find new friends, and catapults Riley's sense of self out into the back of her mind, and takes over and tries to create a new Riley who's going to make new friends so that she's not alone when she gets to high school. And so having one, we have the original emotions trying to track that down so that she can have this identity back. And then we have anxiety trying to build a new one. But because we have joy versus anxiety building this. We have joy, so it's out of this sense of happiness and all of these good emotions. And then we have anxiety trying to build it, which anxiety is now trying to build this out of because we have joy building it out of her happiness, out of the joy, and it's like out of the good things that are happening. And then we have anxiety who's trying to build this identity out of a core of fear. It's like, as much as we try to dress up anxiety, the core of anxiety is fear. And so as much good as she thinks she's doing Riley, this new identity that she is building is one that is centered and based out of fear. And so we have a moment when this new identity comes, like fully forms, and then you have like the one phrase to sum it up. And so her original one is like, I'm a good person. And then anxiety builds it and it forms, and that single phrase comes out, and it's, I'm not good enough. And seeing anxiety's face of like, this isn't what this wasn't my intention. This wasn't the identity I was trying to build. And yet, because anxiety as an emotion is based out of fear, that is what comes out of building an identity based on your anxieties. So yeah, that just anxiety's face when her new identity forms, and the realization, this isn't what I wanted. And then trying to play it off as like, no, it's just like room for more improvement, and whatever else. And then eventually that leading to Riley going too far and pushing, I don't know, she almost injures one of her best friends because they're on opposite teams for the camp. And then, yeah, just my brain trying to figure out where I remember where I was going with this. But her, yeah, leaning that into that new identity that she's created and going a little bit too far. It's like trying to do everything she can to secure what she thinks she wants her future to be, because of the fear of being alone. And then literally gets sent to the penalty box because she, went too far and almost injured her friend. And then just starts breaking down and having a panic attack and freaking out because all of the things that she's trying to be and that she's trying to do to what she thinks secure her future, and then anxiety's identity ringing in her head constantly going, I'm not enough, and just the clash of that until she literally starts hyperventilating and freaking out. And the visual they have for the panic attack or anxiety is just like floundering and rushing and trying to figure out what to do to fix this. It is relatable, and I think it's a very good visualization of it. It's literally your brain is racing, trying to fix it, but it can't fix it, and that's makes you more anxious until it's just this vicious cycle and you can't get out of it, to the point where they have Joy gets anxiety off the console, and even then it's still going because anxiety is then riled up Riley's brain enough that she can't, even not controlling the console, and her brain is still going. And then they have to rip out anxiety's old new identity. They try to put the old one back in, but that one doesn't work. And so Joy realizes she needs to get rid of both of these identities and let Riley's new identity form. Because whether she likes it or not, what has happened over this weekend has created more to Riley's identity. And Also, it builds on with a random avalanche of memories that they've catapulted to the back of Riley's brain, because they're like, oh, we don't need to think about this, and kind of repressing them, kind of like repressed memories, I guess, a little bit. And they ride basically the avalanche of those back to headquarters, and it dumps into the belief center. I don't know what they call it, but where they put the memories to form beliefs. And that's how they get back to headquarters. And so then all of those memories that they didn't want, that Joy's like, we don't need to think about that, start forming beliefs as well. And so then when it comes up, her identity starts shifting and changing and saying all these things, all these positive and negative things, until they kind of, I don't know, just not, it's not a shifting of identity constantly. It is a shifting of, no, not a shifting. It's not a shifting of identity. It's the realization that her identity is not just one thing. She is not just a good person. She is not enough. She has so many things in her, and because of all of those, and it's all of those different things, the bad and the good, that make her Riley. And so another just very deep point, especially for a children's movie, where it's like, no, we're not just one thing. Because we can't just be one thing. It's physically impossible, guys. It's impossible to be a single thing. But just our identity is made up of many things. So it was just, I really do like how they did all of that with the topic of identity. It was very cool to see how they visualized it and how they showed it changing, and how they even had the mechanics of it work within the world that they created. But yeah, that was very cool. And on the topic of identity, since I'm talking about it being multiple things, and we were talking about it in Bible study, the biggest thing that came up is, the biggest thing that comes to mind now is, yes, our identity is many things. We are many things, but it is, as a Christian, all of that is rooted in God and His love for us and how He sees us. So above everything else, we are God's, and we are beloved, and we are His disciples, and we are His servants. And then out of that, there are all of these little quirks, all of these little personality traits that He gave us, so that we can use them to turn people back to Him and to glorify Him through that. And so, yes, our identity is made up of many things, but ultimately, it is rooted in God. And the only part of our identity that matters is God, that we are His child and that we are loved by Him. That is the part of our identity that matters. And the rest of those little branches, we can lose those. But as long as we remember where our identity comes from and whose we are, we never lose our identity. We live in a world where everyone's grasping for identity. And they find it in so many different things. But as soon as they lose that thing, they suddenly don't have an identity anymore. And then they're scrambling, trying to look for the next thing that will be their identity. When in reality, so the only thing that will give us a true identity is something that does not change, something we cannot lose, and that's God. I reached the end of my train of thought. So yeah, I love how they handle the concept of identity. But yeah, just looking at it from a Christian standpoint, it's like, yes, we should. Yes, it shifts and it changes, and all of these different things that happen to us, they make up our identity and they make up who we are. But our identity is rooted in God and His love for us and His desire to have community with us. So, yeah. Those are my thoughts on Inside Out 2. It was a lot better than I was expecting, and I'm glad that it was better than I was expecting. I like what they do with these movies, or what they try to do. I don't know how many of the kids get all the nuances and whatever else. But what they do, like what they're doing with this franchise, with exploring those deeper topics, I like it. I think it's good that they are trying to dig into these things that we don't always like to talk about, especially with younger people. So the fact that they're taking that, no, they need to know about this. I appreciate that. And they do express it very well. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and that's pretty much all I got. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, but they did very well with it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Inside Out 2. You can drop yours in the comments along with any requests, recommendations, whatever else. I post videos on this channel every Wednesday and Saturday, and I post videos on my audiobook channel on Thursdays. I'll see you next time.